episode 1. Let's begin. Alright, welcome back for another vlog. Today I'm going to talk about the Supra. I'm going to tell you exactly to the cent how much I paid for this car in the year 2020 and how it is the world's cheapest Supra. I really don't think anybody bought a cheaper one in 2020, but comment below if you did, if your uncle's dog's previous owner might have done it. But anyways, today's episode isn't overly exciting. It's just about paint stripping the car. So you saw in the previous episode what we started off with. It was, you know, a relatively already stripped car, but in this episode, full paint strip, full bare metal, rotisserie restoration. It's all happening. And at the end of the previous episode, I did say we got a bit of a merch giveaway happening, and if you guessed the color, the engine, and how much it cost, nobody guessed how much it cost. People came close. The engine, I think everybody guessed that. So I've screenshotted the first guy that got it right, and the color, some dude got it bang on, the actual name of the color. So I screenshotted his name, and I'll send you boys out some merch once we get it made. The designs are finalized. Let's get it into the video. So the first thing I did when I was paint stripping this car, I grabbed 40 grit sandpaper on a dual action sander, and I went over the whole body. I went over all the body panels, and what that does, it takes like the top, you know, the glossy or a bit of the clear coat off, and the scratches also sort of go into the paintwork. So when you actually pour paint stripper on it, it's more effective because the paint stripper can now sink into this. And if you're stressing out, like Damien, like seriously, why did you keep your windows in there? And look, the reason behind that was this project was very last minute. I had maybe like 7 to 10 days before Mick, our window guy, could come out and pull out the windows, and I just wanted to get started on this project. Now, pretty much I got a little bit pissed off. There were too many cars sitting around, nothing was sort of getting finished or started, and I was like, man, I've got a couple of weeks between jobs, I have to do something, and went meeny, miny, mo between this one and the black one, and the blue one was the chosen one because it was already more stripped.
The block is awkward, it faces west, long diagonals and sloping too. And in the distance, through the heat haze, in convoys of silence, the cattle graze. A certain texture, that certain beat, brings forth the nighttime heat. Out on the patio we sit, and the humidity we breathe. We watch the lightning crack over Kingfield, laugh and think that this is Australia.
Now with a paint stripper, this stuff is nasty. Like if you get a little bit on your skin, you'll feel it instantly. This shit starts burning like crazy. Seriously, wear eye protection. I know you don't think it's gonna happen to you, but it probably will. You're using a brush, and before you know it, a little bit flicks up, gets you in the eye, and it's game over, man. That's the last thing you want to happen. But anyways, the way I did it, as I said, I whizzed the whole car with 40 grit, and then I grabbed the paint stripper, I poured it, and I brushed it on. But I worked in small sections, so then the chemical wouldn't evaporate as quick, and it would be more effective. don't do it like I did. I did it in a workshop, horrible idea. This place stunk like paint stripper for the next freaking 7 days, especially if you're working in a smaller garage. Make sure you are working in a well ventilated area, and also use the plastic. What the plastic does, it not only keeps the fumes in on the panel you're working, but it also stops the chemical from evaporating as quickly, and overall it's more effective. Now, for anybody wondering, I used a brand called CAM, C-A-M paint stripper, just some of the local stuff I could get, and I used 4 tins, so I think it was 16 litres all up. So I applied the paint stripper maybe 2 or 3 times. Most areas only got hit twice, and I made sure, I realised you don't want to be stingy with this stuff. You want to put quite a bit on so it actually is effective. If you just put a light coat on, it's not going to do anything. But then after a while, you know, the paint stripper does its thing. You scrape off most of the paint, but then body filler in sections still remains because the paint stripper doesn't really eat the body filler, it just eats the paint. So what I found is if I go in it with some 40 grit, it'll actually just sort of shave it off, it'll take it all out, and it'll leave it with a nice bare metal finish that you later on want to refine with some 80 grit, 120 grit, and then epoxy primer. Now that's the way I did it. If you hit it straight away with 80 grit on the bare metal, I find the 80 grit sort of wears out really quickly and it just starts polishing up and heating up the metal, which is what you don't want to do. The reason I use paint stripper over any other method is, firstly, I had time and there's no point of paying someone to do it if I've already got time to do it myself. That was number one. Secondly, I didn't want to fully sand all the paintwork off because that would have taken A, a long time to do, and B, I risk, losing my body curves because you get carried away. You want to rush because this isn't a fun job to do, paint stripping, and before you know it, you might round off, a body line that was once sharp, which is something I didn't want to do. I just wanted to get as much paint off as possible with the chemical, and then later on just go back in and just sort of touch up little areas and hit it with some epoxy primer. As for the door jambs, the engine bay and the rear beaver panel and areas, that involve getting your fingers in there, what I should have done is I should have just, got paint stripper in there as well, but I didn't really think of that at the time. So instead, I just fully sandblasted these sections. I found a really old sandblast in the back. Our air compressor didn't want to really keep up with it, so not something I would do again, but yeah, that's the way I stripped it. Sandblasted that, sandblasted the inside of the doors as well, and yeah, it was all bare metal and ready for epoxy. All right, now before I show you the rotisserie contraption I built and how I got it onto the rotisserie, I'll tell you guys how much I paid for it. Firstly, I'm very impressed that people do remember that I had a 180SX which I swapped for the Supra. So the real story behind it is, I saw this car come up for sale. I think the kid Macca wanted about $3,000 for it at the time. Nobody wanted to pay. Don't know why, idiots. So anyways, what happened is I approached him, or I had a 180SX for sale. Something happened, I don't know the full story, I forgot. But anyways, what went down is I swapped my 180SX that I bought with my mate Harry back in the day, and I gave him a low compression RB25. Total cost on my behalf was $1,800. Straight swapped it for the Supra, and then I sold the gearbox out of the Supra, meaning this car cost me $1,550. And that's how it's probably the world's cheapest. Now, as for the rotisserie, Danny wants to go home, so I'll probably take over the camera and show you guys in a second. Alright, so as for the rotisserie setup, eBay, I don't know, I think this is 2,000 kilo capable, whatever that is converted. And I just went custom mounts into the body, into the back of the car with some high tensile bolts. So that's pretty much the back of the car sorted. Now, as for the front, I definitely didn't make it as nice as Mickey made mine for the Skyline. But, did it myself and it's still holding up, which is happy days. So I went, again, high tensile bolts through there. Massive 6mm plate, probably should have gone 10mm, no big deal. So that goes through there, into there. So if anybody's doing it from home, probably wouldn't do it this way again. As you can see, it's a little bit on the piss. I'd go somewhere from about there. Check out Paul's one, Paul Roseboom, or Rosboom. I'm not too sure how you say the guy's surname, but he made a nice one. So as you can see, all this footage is from the future, and I'm sort of just retelling the story of what happened. But anyways, it was a Thursday night. I think exam period just started, so I had like 2 weeks off. Well, 2 weeks I should have been studying, which I didn't. And I was building the rotisserie, and I get a phone call. I was at the workshop really late one night from my mate Tim in New South Wales. Random phone call, and yeah, I ended up in Sydney somehow.
Once you press the
It's about that time. Can I introduce myself? I've been watching you from far, and it's been too long. Can I have the song? I just get so mesmerized when you up and against that pole. I just wanna take you home. Who were they to criticize? How you decide to make your money? I will spend every dime on you, baby. Take it from me since I saw you in the corner. Had to let you know I want you. All these bitches say you bougie, didn't stop me from approaching. I don't give a fuck what your reputation is. I just won't repeat this night and do it all over again. These are the thoughts in my mind. Hope you don't think I'm crazy. Just don't ever try to play me. These are rules I'm engaging. I sit back in the back and wait for the perfect time. Seems you don't have the time. Wish I could reverse the time. Give me time, pretty little thing. Give me love by the sippy cup. Sip me up, finish up, sip it up. This is lust. Woke up in this bitch, said I need that, need that. Shorty caught my eye, said I need that, need that. Let me get a film and I hope it feel real. I'm the fucking real deal. Bend over, bitch, you know the drill. Woke up in this bitch, said I need that, need that. Shorty caught my eye, said I need that, need that. Let me get a film and I hope it feel real. I'm the fucking real deal. Bend